Why are schools failing to teach your child learn to read? Now, this is a very important question that I want you to ponder upon. Now, I have nothing against schools, but this is a fact today that majority of schools in India are failing to develop the most important and vital skill of language in children. Now, these important skills are reading, spelling, comprehension, and writing. Now, let's understand the four stages of language development. Now, when a child starts to learn any language, and here we are considering English because this is a language that our children are using in schools. So, when a child starts to learn English or any language, they begin with listening to that language, followed by speaking. The third stage is reading, and the fourth stage is writing. Now, the irony of our Indian education system is that they emphasize, put a lot of focus, and expect learners to master the fourth stage of language, which is writing, but without they putting enough focus or emphasis or efforts in developing the first three important stages of that English language. Now, if the child has not developed listening, reading, and speaking skills in English, you cannot expect the child to master the fourth stage of that language, which is writing. Now, let us understand why schools are failing to do this. Now, working with children and parents globally across 110 countries for the last 10 years, what I have realized is majority of schools today are following the wrong methods and systems. Now, when it comes to teaching reading to children, most of the schools are following two methods. And this is what we are going to talk in today's video. So the first method that is widely used in schools is called the sight word method. Now, this is the same method which we were using 10, 15, 20 years back in our schools. Now, under this sight word method, the child is asked to memorize words based upon their word shapes. Now, it is important for you to understand that in English language, there are words which look very similar but have different spellings. And if you see on my screen here, the first line, words well, will, wish, and with. Now, although these words look very similar, the word shapes are pretty similar to each other, but the spellings are different. Now, in English, there are a lot of words with similar word shapes having different spellings. So this is the disadvantage of learning to read with the sight word method, is that accuracy of reading is always compromised. And the most important part here is for you to understand that if my child is learning to read with this approach, that is memorizing words by their word shapes, there are 161,000 active words in the English dictionary today. Now, to memorize these many words is not humanly possible. A child can expect to memorize 100, 200, 500, 1,000 words, but for them to memorize 161,000 active words is humanly not possible. So obviously, if the child is learning to read with this approach of memorizing words, this is not going to work in the long run. Now, the second method which is widely used in Indian schools today is the word family approach, which is also called the analytic phonics method. Now, as the name suggests, analytic or the word family method. Now, under this method, the child is asked to memorize word families. Now, I've taken a few word families here, and you can see at, if, ought, ash, ate. These are all word families. Now, under this approach, the child is asked to memorize the word families itself, and then they read and then they read words for that particular word family. Now, the disadvantage of this approach is that there are hundreds and thousands of such word families which the child is asked to memorize. So obviously, we do not want children to memorize hundreds and thousands of word families, which is going to again, compromise their accuracy. And obviously, for them to recall those word families in the right way at the right time is not always possible. So obviously, with this method of learning to read, their accuracy is compromised, and they are always, limiting themselves when it comes to reading and spelling new words. So under this approach, for the child to read and spell new set of words, they have to keep on learning new word families all the time. Now, again, this is not possible in the long run. Now, if you closely observe these word families, which the child is asked to memorize, now these word families, they can be decoded with synthetic phonics. Now, what is synthetic phonics, which we are going to talk about in the next slide? But, this is the method of learning to read with sounds. Now, if you observe these word families, at, I can decode that word family with the synthetic phonics approach. Eep, ip, ought, ought, ash, ash, and so on. So my question is, if the child can decode these word families with the synthetic phonic sounds, why does the child have to memorize them in the first place? So obviously, the method itself is not correct. Okay, and it is proven to be ineffective, redundant in the long run. Now, what is the solution to this? So research has proved that a systematic synthetic phonics approach is by far the most effective approach of learning to read, which is called the synthetic phonics. Now, a lot of schools in India have started to implement this method in their school curriculum. But again, I want to, bring your focus to this one important aspect, is that that schools in India are only teaching piecemeal synthetic phonics. Now, what do I mean by piecemeal? Now, the word itself suggests that the schools are only teaching a part of synthetic phonics curriculum, which is only 42 to 44 sounds. So schools and majority of phonics classes and reading programs are only teaching 42 to 44 synthetic phonics sounds, which I can prove are not enough. So let's consider a few examples here. Now, in the words bread, beak, fear, and pearl, EA is common in all the four words, but the sound of EA is different in all the words. Now, in schools and majority of phonics classes today, they only teach one sound of EA, which is the long vowel E sound. So the child, when they come across the word beak, can apply the synthetic phonic sound of EA as E, and they can read the word beak without any problems. But my question here is, what if the child comes across the word bread, fear, and pearl? Now, if they try to apply EA as E, obviously they are going to get the pronunciations for all the three words wrong. So here, if you observe, EA has four sounds, and in schools, under the synthetic phonics curriculum and majority of the reading programs and phonics classes, they only teach one sound of EA. Now, obviously, which is not enough, because that is limiting the child's ability to read words having the EA sound, which is different to the long vowel E sound. Let's take another example. The words male, clay, mate, Sunday, vein, wait, and grey. Now, all the 7 words have one sound A in common, but if you observe, the spellings for the same sound of A is different in all the 7 words. So, one sound having 7 different combinations or spellings. Now, again, in schools and majority of the reading programs, they do not cover all the 7 combinations for the sound of A. So, this is where schools are failing to teach children learn to read, even if they are following the synthetic phonics curriculum. Because what they are teaching, or the sounds that they are covering, are not enough for children to transform themselves into champion readers and spellers. Now, the objective of all these reading programs covered in schools is to develop your child's reading abilities that is enough to to cater the learning challenges in preschool years. But obviously, the child is going to enter their primary and secondary school years, and we want them to prepare themselves with the required skills in terms of reading, spelling, comprehension, writing, that will help them master and take on the learning challenges that they come across in preschool, primary, and secondary school years as well. So we want to prepare our children for the learning challenges ahead throughout their school and college lives, and not only their preschool years. Now, in our reading program, we cover more than 100 synthetic phonic sounds, and our objective is to develop the skills of reading, spelling, comprehension, speaking, and writing to that level where the child can reap the benefits of the program for the rest of their lives. So we are not just preparing children for preschool years, like most of the schools in India and phonics classes are doing, but rather we want to prepare children for the rest of their lives. So I'm not saying that you have to enroll your child or yourself in my reading program. No. But what am I trying to for you to understand is that only teaching 44 sounds of synthetic phonics are not enough. Your child needs to master the 100 synthetic phonic sounds that will prepare the child for the learning challenges ahead that they will come across in preschool, primary, and secondary school years to come. I hope this video is helpful for you to make an informed decision when you start teaching your child learn to read. And I always tell parents, do not rely on your child's school, because as I said, that majority of schools in India today are failing to teach children learn to read. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.